Everybody got off that thing. Oh my God, it's still going.
Strike launched countless one-way attack drones, achieving massive effects. I'd like to point out these drones were originally an Iranian design. We took them back to America, made them better, and fired them right back at Iran. Also for the
They are hiding behind these missiles and hiding behind these drones. They wanted to reach a point where you couldn't touch them, and then they could do whatever the hell they wanted with their nuclear program. And there is no way in the world that this terroristic regime was going to get nuclear weapons, not under Donald Trump's watch.
So
I would argue that this threat from Iran
That a suspected Iranian drone has hit a CIA station in Saudi Arabia's capital. Jennifer Griffin is live in Washington. Jennifer, what do we know?
Well, Jessica, we've confirmed with an official source that, in fact, it was an Iranian drone that struck the station, the CIA station in Riyadh. It was part of that U.S. Embassy compound, part of that drone strike last night that led to damage at the embassy. This is certainly a symbolic victory for the IRGC. Nobody was injured. Nobody was at the embassy at the time. The Washington Post was the first to report on the incident, and that it was, in fact, the CIA station that was targeted and hit. But what this indicates is that drones, the Iranian drones, are going to be a big problem. They can take out the missile launchers and even the missile stockpiles, but they have thousands, if not tens of thousands of these drones, and anyone can put them in the back of a truck and fire them. These are really the new suicide bombs of the next phase in the Middle East, and they're going to be a problem for some time.
اکبر سرنگونی یک فروند جنگنده صهیونیستی امریکایی در کوههای شمال لواسان توسط پدافند قدرتمند رزمندگان جمهوری اسلامی ایران بعد از مسیر برگشت بمباران شرق تهران.
از اینجا میاد اینجا.
الآن العمليات المشتركة هي من تتبنى هذه الأمور ومعالجة هذه الفصائل من مواصفتها بأعمال الخارج عن القانون، وأنها سوف تلاحقهم ولن تسمح بزيادة نشاطهم مرة أخرى.
نعم. هيثم، اسمح لي فقط أن أشير إلى هذا الخبر العاجل. تركيا تقول بأنه تم تدمير صاروخ باليستي إيراني عبر دفاعات الناتو أثناء اقترابه من مجالنا الجوي، من مجال تركيا الجوي. إذن تم تدمير صاروخ باليستي إيراني من دفاعات الناتو لدى اقترابه من المجال الجوي لتركيا. أعود إليك هيثم أيضا فيما يتعلق بالمستجدات الواردة من كردستان، من إربيل، بأن هناك مجموعة سيتم تدريبها وتسليحها من أجل القيام بعمليات في الداخل الإيراني. بعض وسائل الإعلام الأجنبية تتحدث عن هذا الموضوع، منهم CNN أيضا. هل صدر أي نفي رسمي من قبل السلطات في إربيل؟
نعم، يعني قبل الإجابة على هذا السؤال دعيني أن أبدأ من هذا العاجل، حيث استهدفت مسيرة، طائرة مسيرة، أحد مقرات الحشد الشعبي في مدينة الموصل، وتحديدا في الفوج الرابع عشر بداخل مدينة الموصل شمال العراق. أيضا هذا الخبر وردنا الآن من هناك بأن طائرة مسيرة قد استهدفت مقرا للحشد الشعبي في مدينة الموصل شمال العراق.
هل ذكر من أين انطلقت، من أي اتجاه أتت؟
وفق المعلومات الأولية بأن هذه المسيرة هي محلية الصنع ولم تسجل أي إصابات بعد احتراز عدد منها ورشقها بواسطة الأسلحة الخفيفة والمتوسطة.
طيب، شكرا لك هيثم أحمد، كنت معنا من إربيل. أشير أيضا أن تركيا تقول بأنها تحتفظ بحق الرد. إذن تركيا تقول بأنها تحتفظ بحق الرد على إيران بعد توجيه الأخيرة صاروخ باليستي تم اعتراضه من قبل دفاعات الناتو المتواجدة على الأراضي التركية. أنتقل أيضا أو من أربيل كذلك المحلل السياسي الكردي محمد زنكنة. أهلا بك أستاذ محمد. اليوم يعني هناك تقارير تتحدث عن إمكانية هجوم بري إسرائيلي بدعم من قوات البيشمركة على إيران. ما صحة ذلك ولماذا؟ لأنه الآن هناك نفي، بس لماذا يتم ترويج ذلك في حال لم يكن له أساس من الصحة؟
Structure that you can imagine in Iran. So a lot of money, power, and influence. And on top of that, it's important that we have not yet heard from state TV that he's alive. And I think this is important, that they're keeping it quiet. Could it be a security assessment because they're afraid that he might be hit? Or is he really unwell? So still a lot of unknown about his well-being. It hasn't been confirmed that he's well and alive, but certainly he's one of the names that have been tossed around to come out as the next successor. And one line that I was getting from one of my sources in Iran is, could he possibly be the next MBS? Could we even think about that? Because last night President Trump said that most likely it's not a bad idea to bring someone from within, a moderate force. Now, I won't call Mojtaba Khamenei a moderate force, but
it's all relative.
It's all relative.
There's also Hassan Khomeini, who's the grandson of the original Ayatollah Khomeini. And so Hassan Khomeini also, if we're talking about nepotism, he might emerge if we're thinking about people who've got this lineage as well as Mojtaba.
Absolutely.
So you've got two people, son and a grandson of either Ayatollahs, who might look like an attractive prospect.
Indeed. And comparing to Mojtaba, Hassan within the system is seen as more moderate, with much less influence within the IRGC.
Yeah, the Americans would quite like him.
Okay.
I've no idea if he's interested. Well, I know he's interested, but I mean, I've no idea what his chances are.
Let me bring you both some breaking news, and everyone watching at home too. This is coming from state media in Iran. We're hearing that the death toll from US-Israeli attacks on Iran has risen. The number is 1,045.
Yes.
Tara, your thoughts there very quickly.
And again, these numbers we can't confirm. And speaking with folks, just the understanding that we have on Tehran, the numbers are most likely much higher. And the challenge and the fear on everyone's mind right now are three things. Number one, whether or not the country is going to get broken up. That is something of huge concern for the Iranian people. The second one, Leia, I think we need to pay close attention to in light of the discussions we're having about potential insurgency forces operating in Iran, is the MEK, Mujahideen Khalq. This is a group that has been operating for many years. They fought during the Iran-Iraq war against Iranians. They, up until 2012-13, were on the terror list. And now they're also operating as this opposition figure. Okay. And if you ask the average Iranian, they hate them as much as they do the regime. And last, I would say, Iranians fear most that the day comes when they are left with the remnants and crumbles of an IRGC that's in power that will further repress and choke them.
So much uncertainty.
So much at stake for the
Tara
Iranians.
and Michael. Just one last bit of breaking news before we head to the break. Turkey says NATO defences, they intercepted a ballistic missile launched from Iran before it entered Turkish airspace. That's what we're hearing there. We'll bring you more on that a little bit later. We're heading for a break. You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up, we're going to have all the build-up to PMQs at midday. Keir Starmer will be taking to the dispatch box. Stay with Sky News.
Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch way, bro. We're going to get in. Right. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw two guys, two bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
That is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
On Sunday night was the only one, but because there have been other drones headed towards Cyprus, it's deemed necessary to send all possible means here to make sure that those drones continue to be downed offshore and that none of them reach the island itself, where life attempts to continue as normal, but people are being told to have go bags with charged phones and batteries and radios and to be ready to go to schools or other public shelters, something that hasn't happened here before. And there are no civil protection mechanisms in place for alerting people. The Cypriot government is now working on providing and building those with European help. So it is a tense situation, made more tense by the fact that we've just heard the Turkish defense minister announce ballistic missiles are heading towards Turkey and that they were dealt with by NATO means in the East Mediterranean, not specifying whether it was Turkish forces or other forces that took those missiles down. That means there is still a flow of warheads in this direction. Cyprus, therefore, is ill at ease.
Operations resumed at Britain's military base in Akrotiri on Tuesday. An Iranian-made Shahed drone struck a hangar on Sunday, and 2 more drones were shot down into the sea on Monday. The incidents prompted authorities to move about 1,000 people out of a nearby village, but the local mayor told us there are no contingency plans.
We need to increase the number of shelters in the area. We need to have an early warning system, and we have to have in place a number of plans to evacuate, because as it stands, we don't have something in place right now.
Savas Loizidis was one of 24 who decided to stay. He showed me his pool, which he plans to convert into a bomb shelter.
My wife and I were in our bedroom shortly after midnight on Sunday when we heard an explosion. We sent our 6-year-old and 3-year-old to their grandmother, and my parents went to a local monastery for shelter.
People here say the island needs help, both with its security and crisis response measures. And since it isn't a NATO member, Cyprus is looking to Europe.
Although life appears to go on as normal, Cypriots know they are vulnerable. The island is the EU's easternmost territory. It lies just 170 kilometers from the coast of Lebanon. Cyprus has said it will not get involved militarily in the US and Israel's war with Iran. Instead, it has sought air defenses from its EU partners.
And that help began to arrive on Monday in the shape of 4 Greek F-16 fighter jets. Greece's newest warship, the frigate Kimon, delivered from shipyards just 2 months ago, and another Greek frigate are due this week. Their task is to track incoming drones and missiles and shoot them down. France too has said it will provide anti-drone and anti-missile systems, and Britain is sending a warship. The EU doesn't have a collective defence agreement like NATO, but this conflict might bring it about. John Psaropoulos, Al Jazeera, Limassol, Cyprus.
Well, Spain's Prime Minister has doubled down on his criticism of the attack on Iran by the US and Israel, warning the conflict risked playing Russian roulette with the lives of millions. Pedro Sanchez was responding to US President Donald Trump's threats to cut trade with Madrid over its position on the conflict. Now, tensions between the two NATO allies are on the rise after Sanchez described the bombing of Iran as reckless and illegal. He's also barred US aircraft involved in the operation from naval air bases. I'm going to go straight to Sonia Gallego, who's standing by in London for us. And this really is the strongest condemnation yet from a European leader, isn't it?
It is, and when you consider that the two men, Pedro Sanchez and Donald Trump, they're practically diametrically opposed to each other when it comes to the politics that they pursue. But make no mistake, Pedro Sanchez gave a very full-throated, robust argument against resolving what he calls an illegality with another illegality. As he said, that would lead to a great catastrophe, very much coming down firmly on the line of international law and placing Spanish citizens first. With that messaging, it certainly is going to find a welcome response amongst the Spanish public because, of course, President Trump is certainly not a popular figure there. Also, what is incredibly unpopular has been this military offensive against Iran as well. That's not finding any popular support in Spain at all. However, politically, there may be those from the right who say that this is really an inopportune time to issue this robust response, especially of a key ally of Spain, the US, at a time when European defense strategies are looking quite tenuous. So all in all, quite a mixed response there, but certainly one that may have to resolve itself.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Sonia. Sonia Gallego for us in London. To some other news now. And Afghan authorities say more than 8,000 people have been forced from their homes following a series of cross-border attacks by Pakistan. Islamabad launched airstrikes last week. The Pakistani government accuses Kabul of harbouring a group called Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan and allowing it to stage cross-border attacks. The United Nations has welcomed the reopening of the Karam Abu Salem border crossing, allowing deliveries of aid into Gaza. Israel had closed all crossings into the Strip following its strikes on Iran on Saturday. Well, voters in Nepal go to the polls on Thursday in an election many believe could see a major political shift. It comes after youth-led protests in September ousted the government. Tony Cheng reports from Chitwan.
A warm reception for candidate Renu Dahal in rural Nepal.
A former mayor and daughter of a three-time prime minister, she has a strong political lineage. But this election campaign has been a struggle. The protests that ousted the government in September appear to have heralded a new dawn in Nepali politics.
في عالم سوري لا في شهادة ما بعرف حبيبي والله ما بعرف أنا معك حالك يا عيسى عجيب ساكت
Euronews. The news.
French President Emmanuel Macron said France will send air defense assets to help allied forces in the Middle East.
Donald Trump has threatened to cut off all trade with Spain, calling the fellow NATO member a, quote, terrible ally.
In a televised address on Tuesday, French President Emmanuel Macron said France will send air defense assets to help allied forces in the Middle East. The French president confirmed that a second military facility had been struck in the region, adding that France shot down 2 drones in a move of self-defense. Macron also announced reinforcements to Cyprus after drones targeted a British military base on the island.
Nous avons réagi immédiatement et avons abattu en légitime défense des drones dès les premières heures du conflit pour défendre l'espace aérien de nos alliés qui savent pouvoir compter sur nous. En plus des moyens déjà présents, des Rafales, des systèmes de défense antiaérienne et de radars aéroportés ont été déployés ces dernières heures.
Macron condemned Iran for its escalating attacks, while simultaneously acknowledging that the initial US-Israeli military operation was conducted outside of international law. The president said around 400,000 French nationals are currently present in the wider region and confirmed the first 2 repatriation flights landed in Paris on Tuesday night.
Right about that. We attacked first.
Donald Trump says he wants to cut off all trade with Spain, calling the country a terrible ally. Comments came during a meeting at the White House on Tuesday with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. President Donald Trump made clear he was not happy at Spain for refusing to increase its NATO defense spending from 2 to 5% of GDP, saying Madrid is not doing enough to meet alliance expectations. He also pointed to a recent ruling by the Supreme Court of the United States, arguing it gives him broad authority to impose tariffs and potentially an embargo on Spain.
I could tomorrow stop, or today, even better, stop everything having to do with Spain. All business having to do with Spain have the right to stop it.
The president further criticized Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez for refusing to allow US aircraft to use Spanish bases for potential strikes on Iran. Trump also defended US-Israeli military action on Iran, claiming the strikes had knocked out much of the country's naval and air capabilities. He insisted the United States acted preemptively and denied that Israel pressured him into launching the attack.
The seas, both the Navy and the Air Force has said that there's no sign of the frigate. So there has been sort of lots of opinions expressed about what exactly happened to this vessel. But at the moment, from what we're hearing of the Navy as well as other sources, there's no debris. It's basically literally disappeared into the waters. At the moment, we've also seen two members of the Iranian consular and the military attaché. Again, there's probably a lot of paperwork, so going to and fro between the divisions and departments of the hospital. We're also hearing of the possibility that a number of bodies recovered from the seas will be brought here to the hospital and then transferred, but waiting for that to happen.
We said very clearly at that time that this will merit retaliation from our side and we reserve the right to retaliate. The only reason we did not retaliate at that time was because we prioritized regional security and the possibility of a ceasefire. But the fact that this is happening again right now and that our sovereignty has been challenged in this way means that this cannot go unanswered another time.
Dr. Al-Ansari also says Iran's attack on Qatar's LNG facilities forced their temporary closure and pose a grave danger to international economies. Meanwhile, as Qatar's airspace remains closed, more than 8,000 transit passengers are currently stranded and are being hosted inside the country. Adil Halim, Euronews, Doha.
Gas prices in Europe are climbing fast after US and Israeli strikes on Iran unsettled global energy markets and revived fears of a wider supply shock. On Tuesday, Europe's benchmark gas contract, the title transfer facility, surged above €60 per megawatt hour, a sharp jump from the low 30s at the end of last week. Analysts say traders are pricing in the risk of disrupted LNG flows, particularly shipments from Qatar that pass through the strategic Strait of Hormuz. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Europe has cut its reliance on Russian pipeline gas and turned to seaborne LNG. That shift has strengthened energy security, but also left the bloc more exposed to global shipping routes and volatile spot markets. The timing is sensitive. EU gas storage is around 30% full, below last year's levels, raising concerns ahead of next winter. Experts warn that if prices remain above 50 to 60 euros per megawatt hour, households and businesses could begin to feel the impact through higher heating and electricity bills. Energy-intensive industries, including chemicals, steel and fertilizers, may also face renewed pressure, adding strain to Europe's already fragile economic recovery.
Ce qu'il a dit, mais voilà, ils ont décidé que là, les bornes étaient dépassées, peut-être aussi par une pression d'Israël qui avait intérêt, lui, à engager des choses, parce qu'on sait que l'Iran a dit depuis très longtemps qu'Israël devait en effet être rayé de la carte, qu'il y avait du renseignement israélien qui était assez pertinent. On a bien vu qu'en effet, une des premières conséquences, c'est qu'en effet, ils ont su supprimer le guide suprême pour le premier jour. Donc c'est quand même avec du renseignement qui n'était pas seulement télécommandé de loin, mais avec du renseignement peut-être humain sur le terrain. Donc il y avait en effet un concours de circonstances qu'il fallait frapper là maintenant pour essayer de faire en sorte que l'Iran change. Qu'est-ce que...
ترافقهم عائلات نازحة لبنانية. هناك توسع لمنطقة الاستهدافات، يعني ليس بالضرورة أن تكون فقط الآن في مناطق تابعة أو محسوبة على بيئة حزب الله، إضافة طبعا إلى التصريح الأخير أو الإنذار الأخير الذي طالب سكان جنوب الليطاني بالتوجه نحو الشمال الليطاني، علما بأن قرى جنوب الليطاني باتت شبه خالية تقريبا، ولكن الجيش اللبناني عمل قبل قليل على نقل
غنوة اسمح لي إلى أن أعود إلى الزميل زياد. الآن نحن نتابع هذه الصور المباشرة من تل أبيب. زياد، نسمع صفارات الإنذار.
نعم يمكن أن تروا ربما هذا الخط الأبيض الآن، هذا صاروخ اعتراض مر من فوقنا في القدس عمليا. صواريخ تطلق الآن باليستية من إيران تجاه القدس ووسط إسرائيل. أتوقع سماع دوي انفجارات بعد بعض الوقت هنا، بعد 4 دقائق أو 3 دقائق يمكن أن نسمع هنا دوي انفجارات. الآن توقفت الصفارات، ما يعني أن عمليات الاعتراض فعليا بدأت الآن.
زياد، الإعلام الإسرائيلي يقول إطلاق صواريخ من إيران ولبنان تجاه مناطق الوسط والجنوب.
صحيح،
يعني عن
صحيح.
أي مناطق نتحدث؟
نعم سمعت الآن دويا، نعم نسمع دوي انفجارات الآن. الآن الاستهداف الأساسي هو للقدس ومنطقة تل أبيب بجوش دان وسط إسرائيل. عمليا هذه الصواريخ موجهة لتلك المناطق. في هذا الإطار نشير فقط إلى أن حزب الله فقط بالأمس انضم لأول مرة منذ 16 شهرا لاستهداف تل أبيب ووسط إسرائيل. انفجارات الآن. إذا تم اعتراض صاروخ باليستي فوق القدس الآن، ونسمع دوي انفجارات ناتجة عن تعامل الدفاعات الجوية الأقصر مدى مع الأجزاء الكبيرة التي تتشظى من هذه الصواريخ عادة كي تسقط قطعا صغيرة على الأرض ولا تؤدي إلى أضرار أو إلى إصابات كما يحدث تباعا في هذه الرشقات الصاروخية. إذن رشقة صاروخية يعني متزامنة من لبنان ومن إيران تجاه شمال ووسط إسرائيل.
Mr. President, with the benefit of hindsight, were there things you witnessed that could have suggested that Epstein was trafficking and sexually abusing young women and girls?
I do not believe so.
I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his island, homes, or offices. I have nothing to add to that. Like every decent person, I've been horrified by what we have learned about their crimes. It's unfathomable that Mr. Epstein initially got a slap on the wrist in 2008, which allowed him to continue his predatory practices for another decade.
At one point during the session, Hillary appeared enraged and stormed out.
The firm's own capital to cover a record redemption request. Meanwhile, the South Korean Kospi suffering its worst one-day sell-off on record, plunging 12% in today's trading, following a 7% drop on Tuesday. The index seeing an AI-driven rally this year that sent it higher by more than 20%, while the S&P has turned lower on the year, currently down by about 0.4%.
But the OBR say the government won't hit 3% on defense for 5 years. The war is happening now. There is no urgency from the Prime Minister. Why is he leaving the job of funding our armed forces to the next government?
Prime Minister. I'm not going to take lectures on defence from the party opposite.
came into office, and what did they do? They cut the defence budget. They missed.
هدد وزير الدفاع الإسرائيلي باستهداف أي زعيم يعينه النظام الإيراني لمواصلة نهج المرشد الأعلى علي خامنئي الذي قتل في هجوم على طهران. وقال كاتس في تدوينة له أن أي زعيم يتم اختياره لمواصلة قيادة خطة تدمير إسرائيل سيكون هدفا واضحا للتصفية بغض النظر عن اسمه أو أين سيختبئ. وأضاف رئيس الوزراء بنيامين نتنياهو بأنه وجه الجيش بالاستعداد والعمل بكل الوسائل لتنفيذ هذه المهمة. فيما اعتبر وزير الخارجية الإيراني عباس عراقجي بأن الرئيس الأمريكي دونالد ترامب خان الدبلوماسية والشعب الأمريكي. عراقجي قال إن توقعات واشنطن من المفاوضات النووية كانت غير واقعية بسبب أكاذيب شوهت الحقائق، معتبرا أيضا بأن ترامب تعامل مع المفاوضات النووية وكأنها صفقة عقارية على حد وصفه. من جهته شدد أو أكد مستشار المرشد الإيراني الراحل علي خامنئي محمد مخبر بأن طهران لا تنوي الدخول في أي مفاوضات مع الولايات المتحدة، مشددا على استعداد بلاده للاستمرار في الحرب لفترة طويلة. وفي تصريح للتلفزيون الإيراني قال أيضا بأن إيران لا تثق بالولايات المتحدة، مضيفا بأنه لا أساس للتفاوض معهم.
Ёбаное дело, летит еще один нахуй, вон. Ёб твою мать. Ебать, он здоровый. Второй. Че ждешь? Бля, так страшно? Да, бля, въебал. Ёб твою мать. Въебал? Ну. Вон, дым пошел черный сразу, вон, из-за дома. Ёб твою мать. Блять, под коленки затряслись нахуй. Ну нахуй.